Nathaniel Bandy. Striving for originality. Smash and compare!
Today, we will go over Luigi from every Smash Bros. Game and figure out which moves were best in which game. Since I don't have time to test how strong each move is myself, I'll be taking the damage information from Smash Wiki for the duration of this series. Now to start, let's look at his neutral attack. His attacks are strongest in Melee, Brawl, and 3DS/Wii U. They average 2 to 5%. Now, let's move to his forward tilt attack. The strongest there is in 64 in Melee, and they average at 10%. And now let's move on to his up tilt attack. The strongest version of it comes from 64 at 10%. Now let's move to his down tilt. The strongest version there is from Melee and Brawl, which are both averaging around 9%. And now let's go to his dash attack. The strongest version of this is from 64 in Melee, which comes in at 12%. Now let's go to his forward smash. Now the strongest version of this attack goes to 64 in 3DS/Wii U's version at 15%. Now let's look at his up smash. His strongest up smash goes to 64 at 19%. Now let's take a look at his down smash. His down smash is strongest in 64 in Melee at 17%. Now let's look at his nair. His nair is strongest in Melee at 8 to 15%. Now let's look at his fair. His fair is strongest in 64, which can get up to 16%. Now let's look at his bear. His bear is also strongest at 64 and can go up to 16%. Now let's look at his U-air. His U-air is strongest in Melee, which can go up to 13%. Now let's look at his dare. His dare is strongest in 64 and can get up to 24%. Now his pummel is equally strongest in every game, Melee, Brawl, and 3DS/Wii U at 3%. Now let's look at his forward throw. The version of that throw is strongest in 64 at 12 to 16%. Now let's look at his backward throw. His back throw is also strongest in 64 at 9 to 12%. Now let's look at his up throw. His up throw is strongest in Brawl and 3DS/Wii U at 8%. Now we're at his down throw. His down throw is strongest in Melee at 7%. Now let's look at his neutral special. His neutral special is strongest in 64 at 7%. Now let's look at his side special. His side special in Melee is strongest at 10 to 26%. Now let's look at his up special. His up special is strongest in all of them and can get up to 25%. Now let's look at his down special. His down special is strongest in 64 at 15%. Adding up every move in which had performed the most damage, 64 won 14 times, Melee 11 times, Brawl 5 times, and 3DS/Wii U 5 times. So Luigi is theoretically strongest in Smash 64. But that doesn't mean he is the best character. Let's look at the American tier lists. Keep in mind, tier lists change all the time, so there's only a little value and worth in them. Regardless, Luigi is actually the lowest ranked character in 64. In Melee, he's low tier A and an overall average character. In Brawl, he's pretty low in the E tier. In 3DS/Wii U, he has a low A tier ranking. I personally like Luigi best in the 3DS/Wii U version because of how fantastic his air game is. Getting combos with him is very simple and satisfying, and he's very easy to play as too. Luigi has changed a lot from 64 to now, but let's go over some interesting things that have changed. From 64 to Melee, his default costume colors have changed. I know I'm getting a bit into the alt costumes territory, but his overalls went from purple to a more navy blue. Also, his down aerial that looks like it would hit several times now only hits once. From Melee to Brawl, his down taunt gets much stronger. As I'm sure most of you know, his down taunt can cause a small bit of damage, but in Brawl, it can KO offstage opponents as low as 0%. That barely matters though, because it's nearly impossible to hit with. He also gains the ability to crawl, but it's really just for show. From Brawl to 3DS/Wii U, Luigi has a new jump animation where he scuttles his feet. This can be seen in some Mario games, such as Mario 64 DS when he's jumping or walking on water. Luigi's infamous up taunt now has him making new facial expressions. You can no longer charge his green missile for forever, it will eventually cancel out, and he'll become vulnerable for a second. The biggest change of his is of course his final smash. He now uses his Poltergust 5000 instead of the negative zone. For you old fans, you may remember me predicting this final smash and nailing the prediction to a T. Hee hee hee. His taunts are pretty much the same from each game. We've already discussed some of the minor differences from his taunts. Now to his custom moves. His first neutral, Bouncing Fireball, does 4 to 6%. His second neutral, Ice Ball, does 4%. His first side, Floating Missile, does 4 to 23%. His second side, Quick Missile, does 5 to 20%. His first up, Fiery Jump Punch, does 1 to 18%. His second up, Burial Header, does 1 to 8%. His first down, Max Cyclone, does 6%. His second down, Clothesline Cyclone, does 8%. My personal favorite combination is the Ice Ball, Green Missile, Burial Header, and the Clothesline Cyclone. I like using the Ice Ball because it sometimes freezes opponents. Since Luigi has a great air game, freezing them in the air makes it easier to nail extra hits on them since they can't move. The regular missile works great for me, and I use the Burial Header for the same reason as the Ice Ball. If I do hit someone with it and they're on the ground, they'll get stuck in the ground, allowing you to hit them again. The Clothesline Cyclone is fantastic because of the brutal power that comes from it. I would like to give a shout out to Cody Anderson, who helped me find more accurate tier lists. What did you think of this video? What did you like and dislike about it? If you respond in a constructive manner, I'll respond if possible. Thanks for watching and have an awesome day.